All right, hey, so I'm just going to take you through how to get the best sound out of your bass for Portrait of Tracy. It's quite a technical song, but I think with a bit of work, it's pretty straightforward. I think there's just a lot of repetition, just the same kind of motifs here and there. And yeah, let's see how we go. First off, I'm just going to play a short segment of the song. It's not going to be the full song because I've kind of forgotten how it goes. It's been a few years since I've played it, so I'll just kind of skip through a couple of things. And then the next part I've forgotten, so I'll just skip to the next bit. Okay, so the very basic thing we need to know is how do we actually get harmonics? So harmonics are when you don't actually press down on the fret, but you're just gently resting on the string just above the fret so that you get what is called the harmonic. So I'll show you the difference between pressing down on the actual fret and just resting above it. All right, so let's just go through the very basic stuff to get the best harmonics out of your bass. So I recommend, first of all, the very, very basic thing that you need to do is to make sure that you're using your back pickup. That's number one. Now, if you don't have one, it's going to make things really hard to get harmonics. It's doable, but it just makes it that much harder. So my settings are, I turn this pickup all the way off, the back pickup all the way up, and the tone knob. The best way to get the easiest harmonics is just to turn your tone knob all the way up, and that'll just make things that much simpler. I like to turn it down a bit just to make the sound a bit warmer, but if you're really struggling to get some harmonics, then just crank it all the way up. The next major thing with harmonics is to play on the back pickup if you have one. Again, it just makes things so much easier, and I'll just show you the difference between playing here where it's a lot tighter versus here where the strings are just a bit looser, and it's just hard to get a good tone out of it from the front here. So I'll show you the difference. Yeah, so that's what that sounds like at the back here. The next tip I'd recommend is to really dig in with your right hand when you're playing, like this. So really get in there. Don't be scared to play. The next big tip is to cut your nails. I think that's such an important thing, especially when playing harmonics, because if you have even the slightest bit of nail, you'll be able to hear it come through the bass and the harmonics, and it won't really sound that great. I don't actually have any nails on my fingers. Well, I've cut them pretty short, but I'll just play with the nails just to show you what it sounds like. You can hear how it's quite clicky, but without nails, you can see how short my nails actually are. They're pretty much non-existent, and it just sounds so much nicer and cleaner. It's just a lot cleaner. All right, the next big tip is to play directly above the metal fret itself. Don't play to the left or to the right of it, just directly above. And that should cover majority of the song, except for the couple of notes that he plays in there that are in the middle of the frets, which I'll talk about in a second. All right, next big tip is to let go of the fret as soon as you get the sound. So this is what I mean. You can see how I'm not holding onto the fret as soon as I get the sound. I just let go of it. It doesn't have to be like super drastic, you know, you don't have to really show that you're taking it off. You just have to make sure that it's not touching it, because otherwise it'll just mute the sound completely and it'll just undo all the hard work. All right, another major thing is to have your bass properly set up. If it's not set up, what can happen is your action is really high, meaning that your strings are really far away from the frets, making it really hard to press those frets down. And that's really going to create a lot of tension in your hands. So just go to your local music shop. I'd recommend Bass Center here in Melbourne, in South Melbourne, and just ask them to get your bass set up. Just ask them, can I please have my bass set up? And it should cost roughly $90, and then they'll charge you extra for strings if you want new strings. But it's night and day, and that's one of the main things I'd recommend doing. You know, it can really be the difference between a good player and a great player, and you'll be able to tell the difference if you haven't had your bass set up already. So another thing in the song is the false harmonics. So these can be quite tricky because a lot of them require big stretch of hands. Myself, I don't really have big hands, so I started playing this when I think I was in year 9 as well. So, you know, don't let small hands deter you from really playing this song, because it's possible. All right, so considering everything we've spoken about so far, really take everything into consideration, especially for these false harmonics. With this big stretch one, you have to do everything that I've spoken about. So you have to put your finger directly on top of the metal fret itself, and then with your pinky, just try and put it directly above the metal fret. And as soon as you get that sound, just let go of it. I'll show you now. Big stretch, but this one with your pinky, you probably don't even need to get it directly above the metal fret. It sounds pretty good by itself, but just make sure that your index finger on that second fret is really on that metal fret. That'll make the difference. Another big tip for this note itself, just by itself, is you'll find that when I'm playing, my elbow actually sticks out like this. It just gives you a bit more stretch room to kind of stretch your hands out, obviously. So if you have a look at when I play and then I hit that note, you'll see my elbow actually come out. I'll show you. That's something natural that comes. So just try and practice doing that. The other set of harmonics, some of the trickier ones that are in the middle of the frets, you just really have to play and see what the sound is coming from. So even if you're out by a little bit, like an inch, not even, it's going to sound very different. The sounds will be very different. So I'll show you now. You can see how like even the smallest change in direction really just changes the sound. So just have a play. I think the sheet music, if you have it, is pretty accurate. So just try and follow that as best as you can. Yeah, so for these chords here, you'll really be able to tell the difference. So just make sure that this finger is on the fret, and then your pinky is really dependent on where you put it. So there's that sweet spot. And then for that one, it's just directly above the middle fret. And the very last chord, it is a pain in the butt. So here, really remember everything that I've spoken about already. But this one, I find that I play it a little bit different to everything else, just because you've got to hit 3 strings, 3 frets, and then have that big stretch. So what I tend to do is I tend to use the edge of my finger as opposed to the very flat of my finger. So here, I'll show you. Instead of doing that, I do this, okay? So that, and because the reason I do that is because if you're using the flat of your finger, even the slightest amount of skin touching the strings are going to mute the rest of them. So that's why I use the edge, because it's the thinnest part of the finger. It's not going to touch anything else. It's not going to mute anything else, okay? So what I do is I play the E string with my thumb, and then I play the 3 other strings, thumb, index, and middle. Yeah, so you're really pressing up against that middle fret with the edge of your finger, and your elbow kind of sticks out as well. So everything I've spoken about, edge of your finger on the actual metal fret, your elbow sticks out a tiny bit, and with your pinky directly above the metal fret. As soon as you get that sound, let go. Make sure you really attack it with your right hand as well, because that's quite a hard one to get out. So yeah, if you have any other questions, just let me know. If you want me to relearn the song completely, just let me know. I'm happy to do that. And then we can kind of go through each section step by step if that's something you want to do. So cool. Good luck.